Yo, what's going on? This is Kristen. I'm here with SunYot Media. I'm laying on the couch. I've got some stuff going on in the background because I feel like it's relevant. It's kind of relevant to the point that I'm trying to get back into watching anime. After everything that's kind of gone down and everything that I've been kind of working on and all of the bits of content that I've been putting together and producing and things like that, I'm finding myself quite, not exhausted, but at least a little bit tired towards everything. And one of the things that has been confusing me as of late is just this notion of One Piece in general. One Piece is one of those anime that's been around for so long, and I'm just having to really focus in order to be able to kind of watch what's going on. It's kind of crazy. Like, when I think about how long this Wano arc is and how comparatively compared to other really, really long arcs, like Skypiea is probably the first one where people were like, all right, this is a long one. Even though Alabasta was long, but it didn't feel as long because it was kind of the first one where we were like, all right, we're here for a long time. Then one of the things that the creator seems to have more so than any other manga creator is stamina. The stamina to drag the story out and to just live and exist in the moment to moment of the story is so extraordinary. And that is, I think, the biggest barrier. I'm yet to hear anybody revel in the story anymore. It's almost as if everybody has become these cross-country marathon runners or anime watchers of these anime programs. Like, people are celebrating the fact that we have over 1,000 episodes, and they're celebrating that they've caught up, and I spent all this time catching up, or sit with me while I catch up. I'm trying to think back to when people were really talking about the story, about, man, I sure wonder what One Piece is. Whoa, I wonder who's going to be the next member of the Straw Hat Pirates. Whoa, I sure can't wait to see the next special move. There's a sense to the show that internal show logic of, this is how the powers work, this is how the world works, this is how the story works. That type of stuff is, you have to really search for it right now. And there's a whole lot that this show does brilliantly. The characters are just as strong as ever. The energy is just as strong as ever. The best part of the show is the adventure, the exploration of them going to new locations and being, we're going to check out this place. Like, that's probably why I am really pushing to get into One Piece once more. It's because I'm hoping that I can see the next location. The level of excitement that I had and anticipation that I had on the way to the Undersea Kingdom, on the way to the Mermaid Saga, was matched by, like, I don't know if it was matched. I don't know if anything really drew me in the way that particular trek towards that did. I thought it was just so cool. The best part about the One Piece story is the adventure. It's the ability to see them go from island to island, to go from place to place, to see them really kind of explore and find these new locations and kind of find these new lands. And then getting to see the variety of the characters and the fact that now we're getting into the place of like myth, real mythology, kind of craziness, kind of this extraordinary like notion of everything. I want to see myself more in these stories than I do. I want to see myself more in these stories than I do now. When the story first comes up, when you first watch any anime or manga story, one of the first things that you really think of is, how do I fit in? What exactly would I be doing if I lived in this One Piece world? And I think that's a fair question, because we listen to these stories and we listen to these things because we want to find ourselves. We want to see, whom would I connect with? Would I be on somebody else's ship? Would I be a pirate captain? Or would I be a member of the crew? And as you're fitting in, you're like, how would I handle this adventure? Where would I be? And that's kind of the fun of it. All of these shows, every bit of content in its like core, it's a throwback to the years of imagination, the imagination that we had when we were young. When I think about how everything was broken down in elementary school and in kindergarten, everyone had toys, everyone had games, and we all played different types of games. We played Cops and Robbers, which was the classic, which we actually did play when I was little, and it was like a real big thing to see if you could get your own, like, make the gun that you had where you were shooting with your hand to make the sound, and whoever could make a good gun sound, you're like, oh, that's awesome. And then people were coming up with rules, and I remember people had like, oh, I have an invisible shield, and like all kinds of stuff, and that was a ton of fun. I really enjoyed doing all that stuff. Or games like Shadow Tag, where it was tag, but it was at night because we were like, it was like a nighttime camping like thing for the school or whatever. And so you would have a flashlight and you would just run around, and if someone shone their flashlight on you, that was them tagging you. And beyond that, you know, you would play, some kids would play with their Star Wars toys, figurines, or their G.I. Joes, the Ninja Turtles. Some kids played with cars, monster trucks, like the Hot Wheels and stuff. So when you look at movies and television now, it's a manifestation of the adult version, that adult version of the types of core elements that we played with as a kid, just looking at them through much more mature eyes. It's looking at them through the what's needed for us in order to be entertained. Because as you mature, you start wanting to see things a little bit more subversive, or a little bit more groundbreaking, or a little bit more real. As you start to become an individual, some people really love the reality of things. And when a show gets all the little aspects and all the pieces and all the little items exactly as they would be in real life, that's very satisfying for a certain sect of people. Think about a show like Breaking Bad. It's very much concerned with the reality of situations and what would or could happen. So that is where I think the tiers of the different genres come in. So going back to One Piece, when I started reading it, first I watched a couple of episodes on 4Kids, and then I went and bought the first volume of the first manga years and years and years ago. I just remember it had such a cool sense of like wonder of taking these like unnecessarily wild and ridiculous looking characters and turning them into almost something that was taken serious, not fully serious, but taken serious. And as I've grown and One Piece has continued, my mentality and what is required for myself in order to feel satiated and satisfied by stories, One Piece is still maintaining that childlike wonderment. And the notion that they're going to all of a sudden, start going, more serious or more real or have a little bit more concise storytelling. That's not what this show is about. It's about extravagance. It's about over the top nature. It's about larger than life mythology and these humans. Compare it to like Greek mythology, since that's the most common that everybody knows. You have figures like Hercules, Hermes, Athena, Zeus, Poseidon, Hades, and other demigods like Hercules, but actual gods like the actual gods Poseidon, Hephaestus, and Persephone and Orpheus, and all of these mythological characters whom had powers or who were greater than the sum of their parts or who were larger than life. And then when you start to see this show and they introduce characters like Whitebeard, who are giants. I think that the notion is that Whitebeard is half elephant. That's why he had the tusks, white tusks, and doesn't really have a beard. And you start to get into this realm where, these aren't humans that are just like incredibly strong. These are demigods and beings, and they're actually living in this world of myth. So it creates a totally different audience. And I think that is why I find myself having to really just let it play and kind of come back to it. It's really funny. The show that I'm really most interested right now is Dr. Stone. And it's been some years since it first started. I was always really fascinated by it. And I have a hard time trying not to read the manga because it's one of those stories that it really kind of goes beyond what you would expect for any type of Shonen Jump story. Now, Dr. Stone is the story of, and I don't think I'm going to do any real spoilers for the story. I'm just going to tell you the premise of what happens in like the first 5 minutes of the show, just so you guys know if you haven't watched it. If you have and you've read it or whatever, I'm not going to get into anything that's happened. And I am caught up with all of the anime, but not the manga. So we're in season 2 or 3, episode 3, if you listen to this later. It's the story where there's this kid scientist at his high school. He's just really smart and he's a genius and he's working in projects and blowing stuff up and on and on. And then when something happens, there's a green light all over Japan, and then it turns out all over the world, and everyone in the planet gets petrified. And years, thousands of years go by with everyone being frozen as rock, and then something happens and the rock that encases him breaks and he wakes up like 3,000 years in the future. And that's the premise. And if you kind of take that premise, you have this new undiscovered landscape of a world. You have a mystery of not quite knowing what's going on in the world. You have a genius intellect character, and he goes about solving problems, learning how to live, all through the use of the knowledge that he has acquired throughout his years, his scientific mind, and trying to piece things together. And every single time I think about the premise, I get goosebumps, because it's so simple and it's so direct, but it creates the perfect sandbox for anybody who really loves the mystery of creativity, of science, of figuring things out, of piecing things together. Every shonen doesn't have to be a battle manga. Every battle doesn't have to be with your fists or with your physicality. There are other types of stories that can be told. And I think that's why a lot of people lean in towards seinen manga, or start reading other types of books or watching other types of fiction when they get older, is because they want to see different aspects of the world told in an entertaining way. Sometimes too, there's a notion of wanting to feel represented through these stories. So whenever I lean into something that's like a show, and I'm like, man, this is really gripping, it's because I can see an aspect of myself in these stories. Because of the type of person I am, I like to sit, I like to think things through. It's really cool seeing a character like Senku from Dr. Stone, who kind of gets his praise from being intelligent and gets his victories from being smart. And while I enjoy the athletic stuff too, it's kind of nice to see him getting applauded and respected, and everybody is like looking towards him for judgment and guidance and stuff, which is, something that somebody like myself would really appreciate. Because that's kind of how stories are. We want to get the sense of satisfaction vicariously through the characters, through the storytelling, through kind of whatever might pop up. And I truly think that everything that we're wanting to know, all truths that we're trying to put together, everything is found in stories. Stories are the blueprint to our morality. They're the blueprint to our history of what were people like what ideas were people trying to think through or articulate prior to the interference of new ways of thinking and new technology. When people were at the cusp of, how do we solve this universal problem? How do we address this thing that we can't seem to get people to look at in the appropriate way? When you read the book, The Grapes of Wrath, it's addressing all of these, foreclosures, or all the things that were happening in Oklahoma with people that had farms and homes and stuff, and the banks were coming in and buying everything, and everyone had to move west because there was hope for freedom, and just keep moving west, and maybe we can make some money. And it was really a way to get society to look at that situation. When you think about 1984, it was a way for society to be like, hey, Orwell is pointing to this thing that could potentially happen. All eyes on us. No one can say anything that's incorrect. Everyone has to follow along with whatever the agreed upon common language mandate is. It was a warning versus Grapes of Wrath, which was like, hey, this needs to be addressed. This is what great fiction does. It doesn't tell you things that are true. It speaks to truths, universal aspects of things that we probably are all feeling, sensing, wondering about. And when it's done right, when it gets it right, that's why so many people gravitate towards it. There's a reason that so many people are Star Wars fans. There's a reason that so many people like Rocky. It's because they speak to these universal truths that we all kind of like. So going back to One Piece, what truth is One Piece trying to really get across? It's trying to push this notion of like hard work, long dedication, intense effort, extreme conditions can bring about your own version of strength. And as long as you are strong, you can be respected. As long as you put in that effort, people will be there to help you. And as long as you really focus in and do the hardest task, you can take on the biggest enemies. And the enemies are literally giant monsters. It finds a way to turn everybody crazy. So, I don't know, like it's just one of those shows where it's not so much about the story as so much about existing in this long, slow, drawn out feeling. I mean, it's basically soap operas. One of the things that I thought was really funny is that, like, whenever my girlfriend really got into Yellowstone for a while, and I thought it was fun because at first I thought Yellowstone was going to be a serious drama until I found out that it was more of like a soap opera vibe and more similar to, as some people describe, Dallas, than what I was anticipating was going to be this very serious style show like a Breaking Bad or what have you. Now, I know that what happens in that show is not really how any of that stuff works. You know, the guy's a farmer, he's running around, and every single time someone pops up, there's another meth lab that he and his son got to bust up. The one son comes across like these meth dealers who are constantly kidnapping and like doing these bad things, and he has to get into like a lot of gunfights and stuff. And you're like, wait, what's going on? And then the wife is always getting injured, and there's all this tragedy, and there's all this zaniness, and like there's all this like good son, evil son, like internal like drama, but it doesn't have any of the grounded nature of like a Game of Thrones, which is hilarious to say, because Game of Thrones is completely as fictitious as you can get. It's like a faux medieval story with some fantasy elements, but the fantasy is so light. But it's super grounded until like the last couple of seasons. But she was really into it. She loved it. She loved it to the point where we were like, oh man, we're out of episodes. So we had to go get one of the live TV network subscriptions so she could keep watching. Yellowstone is outlandish and it's wild and it's cool and it's bizarre. And it fills a need. It fills a need of a type of story that we want to see. The same way that One Piece does. So I'm going to keep this one going. Thanks for listening to SunYot Media. So let me say this before we get into the next thing. I think I'm going to talk some more about movies. I want to talk more about probably like maybe the mythos of John Wick 4 or maybe the Super Mario Bros. Movie, because I just saw both of those and I saw Air. So I might talk a little bit about those. That said, I want to say that I'm really grateful to everybody who listens to this podcast. We're trying something new. Podcast is going to be on the Patreon. I'm going to upload a ton of episodes on there. I'm just going to keep recording, put them up, keep it as convenient as possible, keep it as fun as possible, and really put the podcast stuff up for people to listen to. We are going to be filming the first official short film under the SunYot media banner. It's going to be filming in this space. I don't want to say exactly where, but in the DFW area. And it's going to be fun. We got a nice tight crew, and we're going to really sink in. So I want you guys to subscribe to the SunYot Media YouTube page. That's where we're going to be putting the actual content. We're going to put it there. I want you to subscribe to SunYot Media on Twitter. No, wait. Subscribe to SunYot Media on Clapper and on TikTok. I'm going to be doing some stuff. So hopefully by the time that these podcasts are being listened to, it's already available. Just go to SunYot Media, SUNYOT. Make sure you just give them a glance, subscribe to the page, and just give it a watch. Tell us what you think. We're just in there. We're having fun. A lot of this is stuff that I've been wanting to do for decades. And I'm just very blessed and very fortunate to be able to do it. I just want to make sure that I keep putting out more content for you guys so that we can really kind of push this thing forward. So yeah, let's hop into some of this movie talk. I'm going to talk about the Super Mario Bros. Movie a little bit, and then I'm going to talk about how cool John Wick 4 is. I don't want to get into any spoiler talk about any of this stuff. I'm realizing, even Air, all these movies serve different purposes. Air was really wild, cool story, which had a really fun behind the scenes look of what it was like for these companies that were trying to get on the map as a company. Now, it's a big celebration of capitalism, big celebration of commoditization of the black athlete. It's a big celebration of how do you finesse a system that operates in a certain way when you're trying to do something a little bit different. And how does the people who divvy out the funds and wield the money, how do they know to place their bets on any type of innovation? In all of these stories, there's always this notion that sticking to it, innovation is going to work out. Because, and I can say this about Air, because we know it's the story of them creating the Air Jordan shoe. So we all know how it goes. Everybody going to the premiere, a lot of people were wearing Jordans. I'm sure a lot of people wore Jordans after the fact, just like when Last Dance came out. I love those podcasts that Schultz did. It's my favorite set of the Flagrant podcast is when they did a podcast episode for each release of Last Dance. So it came out episodes 1 and 2, episodes 3 and 4. So I think there's 8 episodes, and they put out 4 podcasts for each couplet of episodes that came out. And it is there, in my opinion, the best podcast content that they have on their show. And I think it's just amazing. And you can feel the passion that they have for that specific Bulls team. They feel that passion for that specific Bulls era, Michael Jordan's mentality, and they get to just revel in it. That's their moment. So whenever you get that passion about that subject. It's like when Kevin Smith was talking about The Dark Knight, when The Dark Knight came out. And he was just going in and making jokes and enjoying it, talking about how this is basically DC fans' Godfather. It's amazing. And when everything that you've ever wanted just kind of comes together and you really get to experience, those are the kind of the podcasts I like to hear. I got way off subject. So yeah, I think Air is a cool movie. I don't want to like say too much about it, other than the fact that I know that there's some people who are being very particular about the content that they consume, and I applaud anyone who really wants to make sure that they are doing right by the world and being just with who they are and consistent with their worldview. I think that's super cool. So Air is a really fun film. Ben Affleck is an amazing director. I think that Ben Affleck is one of the most, he really knows how to set the tone for a film. He really knows how to set the energy to where you can speak about a serious topic without it being overwhelming, where there can be drama and comedy mixed in, where people can kind of give each other some noise and stuff back and forth, you know, and like it makes all of us laugh when people are talking shit. Like, it's great. So I'm a fan of that one. Mario Bros has Super Mario Bros. I think we saw these back to back. Yeah, so we saw Air on a Saturday, and then we saw Super Mario Bros. On a Sunday. I had way more fun at Air. Super Mario Bros. Is such the classic. Such the classic. Everybody's been waiting for this movie, the Super Mario movie. And I can only imagine if that had came out when I was young. Not that we had the technology, but just the fact that it's been a long time coming. I think Bowser was fantastic. Jack Black was hilarious. I actually was laughing out loud at everything that he did. And I really think that, you know, I can feel Miyamoto's like influence in the film. So yeah, if you have like really young kids, this is a good movie for them. It doesn't get into anything too heavy or too unnecessary. And for really young kiddos, they can just hop in and enjoy it and see stuff they recognize and have a good time. Now, let's jump to John Wick 4. John Wick 4 is, in my opinion, it is a masterpiece. And so far that it's the epitome of that type of movie that they were trying to make. It's grandiose, over the top. The fighting is cool. Cinematography is bonkers. It's just, they just went for it. It's just incredible. And it really makes you think, like, there's no limits. There's no limits. If you really want to create something that's different and there is no blueprint, you just kind of have to figure out what you want to do and come up with something different. Like, all I've been thinking about in preparation for this short is making things feel cinematic and making things feel like a movie and making it feel like an experience. That's what I want. I want things to feel like an experience. Most things in life, most films, most anything is an imitation. Everybody wants to imitate the greatness that came before, the popularity that's happening now. They really need to allow themselves to seek whatever it is they are supposed to do. What's in their minds? What do they enjoy? What's their real perspective? Who are they really? There's all this concern that showing up as you're supposed to show up is going to give people an opportunity to distance themselves from you. It gives people an opportunity to be like, well, you need to have this opinion, or you need to speak about things in this way. But that is if they were going to make a film. But for your movie, for my movie, for what we are trying to do, it's important to put yourself into the film, the world through your lens. Like, we watched Captain Fantastic a few weeks ago, and I had seen just like a brief clip, but it was so its own thing. It was small, self-contained, touching, and they just focused on beautiful cinematography, beautiful looking shots, gorgeous mood and film and lighting and technique. And they just really put together something that sticks with you because there's a perspective that they had. They had their own point of view. They had a story they want to tell, and they allowed themselves to tell that story. That's what it's all about. That's cinema. That's film. So when I think about the John Wick and how number 4, when I think about how John Wick number 4 was put together, it is its own universe. It's its own world. And you see the polish and the joy and the brilliance of it just churning in the reality that they create for themselves. And just the fact that they keep elevating Donnie Yen as Donnie Yen is the relational character, or he's the antagonist. I have to think it through. And he's also a brilliant martial artist. He's fantastic. And if you've watched the Ip Man series, and that's Ip Man, he has been a martial arts megastar for decades, and he's just brilliant to watch, and it's a ton of fun, and it's a great movie, but it's really in the vein of this is the story that they are telling. This is the point of view that the director and the creatives have. And that's what I love about it. I like a movie that has like something to say, it has some personality. I like a movie where the creators are like, this is what I like. This is my perspective. This is the greatest thing since sliced bread. That, in my opinion, is what is most important. That, in my opinion, is what's most brilliant. So, let me talk a little bit about some of my own work. I'm really interested in this documentary style space. I watch people like Anthony Bourdain or people like Gordon Ramsay, and they will go and they will just sit and luxuriate amongst all of these brilliant individuals. Gordon Ramsay is attracted to excellence of technique. Anthony Bourdain is attracted to authenticity of the experience. How do people really eat? How do people really live? And then I can make the judgment of where I prefer to be. I listened to an interview yesterday where Bourdain was talking about how much he loved Vietnam and Vietnamese culture. And when he first got there, he was worried because they had recently, I guess the Vietnam War was in the 70s, or maybe he got there in the 90s. And he was like, hey, are you guys like still pissed at us and all this stuff? And like, he got to really talk it out and hear how people were like, we've been at war for like 600 years. we were at war with China and France and China again and Spain, like in Japan and or whatever. Those aren't the exact countries, but he named like 4 or 5. And yeah, like that's true. Their culture has roots, and it doesn't surround how their relationship with anyone from the United States. And that's very cool. Gordon Ramsay goes all over the world, and he like wants to know the best of the best technique, and he wants to push himself and challenge himself. And he always has these competitions. He's a competitive, like he's addicted to competition. He loves competition. He loves being competitive. So his shows are surrounding this notion of a competitive life as a winning life. Bourdain's shows are surrounding this notion that an authentic life is a correct life. And I've always been of the belief that a philosophical life is the correct life. I want more than anything to do that type of work. And I hope it kind of plays out in what I've been doing, because let me tell you this. Everything surrounding anime and manga is gotten very weird. It's everywhere. It's all over the world. It's all over the mainstream. People are speaking about it the way that they used to speak about MTV when I was a kid. Nobody watched anime like that. Anime was confined to just 4 or 5 friends who kind of knew about it, sitting in like the dark film room, watching like random prints that someone was able to get, or some like thing from like a comic book shop. There used to be like an anime store that opened in DFW called Planet Anime. They opened one in like Dallas, one in Plano. And for those who don't know, Plano is like 15 minutes north of Dallas. It's one of the suburbs. And it was the first time where I could just wander around a store and there was anime stuff everywhere, because there wasn't when I was coming up. And so people before me were like, oh, look at this. There's a whole store. We didn't have this as a kid. And now then, like, subtitle group, fan subgroups came out, scanlations came out, and then we get streams, and now there's simulcasts, like simulcasts. This is bananas. So when I think about how it's so mainstream, how if you go to TikTok, there's tons of people talking about it. It's popular. It's what's happening. These conventions and these rave parties where everyone's dressed in anime characters, and like I got to see like there's a guy who dresses like Chef and he's doing his dancing and stuff like that. It's just one of those things where I never really expected it to come to this. I never really expected it to become a situation where everybody is talking about anime. It was a thing of whispers. It was a thing of, that was just kind of like, like we kind of knew about it a little bit. Me and my friends kind of knew about it a little bit. Me and a couple of my colleagues would know about it a little bit. I was fortunate because my cousin put me on, so she would show us all the stuff that she got. It was a whole new world. If she hadn't told me about it, I'd never know. I would never know. And so going to these conventions and seeing the stuff that like Club Kaiju is doing, seeing the stuff where you have DJs like Kawaii Club or Zero Sum, and they're showing up month after month, week after week, putting on these shows where people can come and cosplay. I think it's a beautiful thing. I think it's probably, I dare say, gorgeous, a very gorgeous aspect of the world, of reality, of real life. And it's a part that's been so overlooked for so long that I'm so flabbergasted. So I've just been going around getting footage, documenting it a little bit, talking to people here and there, seeing kind of like what we have. And I'm thinking that I may have enough to kind of compile something for the real otaku documentary. Like it might be actually time to kind of put the whole documentary, the aspects and the pieces together of just this nice, fun, raw footage thing. And then I'm debating about how I'm going to be into it. So like some of the footage and the podcast stuff of me talking, me interviewing a couple of people will be in there from the past. Some of the things that I tried to do will probably be in there. I just want to kind of express the depth of things, of how deep this anime culture goes. Like the terminology, otaku, weeb, they used to call it Japanimation back in the day. People called themselves weeaboos. People, like, I don't know what they call themselves now. It's just like a thing that you can kind of get into. So I know I just was trying to get across the meaning behind what it feels like to really go to these conventions and just sit and marvel. And here's the crazy part for myself. I'm not really participating. I'm not really in the thick of things or in the middle of things as a patron. I'm just kind of sitting back and observing because what's supposed to be happening new is supposed to be brought forward by the younger people. So when I was young, I was one of the people that was like, yo, we got to talk about, I was in there with the scanlations and like us sharing FTP servers and us like being like, oh man, talking about like forums were brand new and actually having conversations with people. That was different. And some people cosplayed. But now it's like, it's an industry, it's a thing. You can go your whole life and only go to anime clubs and parties and events all years, your whole young adult life, from 24 to 29. They're out there. They didn't used to exist. I saw these mobile otaku parties that happened, and everyone is just kind of like really getting in and dancing and stuff. I got some really old footage from Akon somewhere of just like some spectacular like moments. That's what I want people to see. That whole like notion about documentary style footage, from my perspective, getting philosophical about anime, its importance, what it was, what it is, what it could be. That's the beautiful part of it. All right. So my recording device, looks like I got 1 bar left on battery. I'll have to replace the batteries in this thing soon. I started recording on a Zoom to make things easier. Eventually, I'm going to have to switch back to an actual XLR microphone just because the sound is better quality. But with this, I can kind of kick back. I can kind of enjoy. I'm not trying to do the perfect thing. I'm trying to do the most honest, the best thing, and really put it together. I think now is the time for SunYot Media, for myself, for Kristen, to really put together something unique, something that I haven't really done before or seen before. And I want to try and develop a style of art that matches who I am and what I do and what I believe. Because there's a lot that I really believe and that I believe in. And I'm very fortunate to be able to do some of the things that I do. Like the fact that I can actually wonder, oh man, I sure hope that I can rent a, whatever, like a Sony FX camera, blah, blah, blah. Like what? That's crazy. That's an industry quality camera that I can rent for whatever purposes and just kind of utilize. That's beautiful. Life is amazing. Everything is incredible. So wish us luck. I mean, I'm just gonna keep doing it. I need to figure out what type of show that I can kind of do myself, because I don't have anyone that I can partner with. I'm having a hard time getting people to kind of show up and commit and do what needs to be done. So I may just have to start going to these conventions and interviewing people and just do one go at it, just give it a try and just be like, hey, this is, SunYot Media, blah, blah, blah. And just kind of put it out there. I really want to make something great for me. I want to make something that's just perfect for me, that just feels right, that I can just kind of like revel in and enjoy and stuff like that. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. And I'm already finding myself kind of like fiddling with things now as I'm putting this together, because I just think that, I don't know, man. I just think that there's so much cool stuff out there that needs to be shared and shown. So I'm going to end this podcast episode here. We're at about 50 minutes. Maybe I'll record another, but I really need to start uploading this stuff. So I'm probably going to spend the next hour just starting to upload stuff to the Patreon. Whatever it is, I'm going to put it up. I'm going to find a way to post it. I'm going to find a way to get things going, because it's past time. It's beyond time. I'm really excited. Thank you so much for listening. Remember, subscribe to SunYot Media. Go to the YouTube page, SunYot Media, and subscribe. Follow us on Instagram, because we're about to start releasing a bunch of stuff, and on Clapper and TikTok. Clapper especially, I think we can try out a few more things that are unexpected, so I think it's going to be fun. But TikTok as well. And definitely check out Club Kaiju. I love those guys. I love what they put together. And go see a good movie. Watch an anime. Tell me your opinions. We're going to get things going. Thanks for vibing with SunYot Media.